Hi, welcome to the Intercode podcast. Our guest today is Stephany Kirkpatrick, CEO at ORUM. Stephany's had an incredible career ranging from leadership positions at LearnVest, Northwestern Mutual, and at ORUM, where she pioneered real-time payments. In today's episode, we will learn about the fundamentals of networking, identifying professional networks, and building and nurturing long-term professional relationships. Welcome. Hi, Stephany. How are you? Welcome to the Intercode podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. I know we connected a few weeks ago trying to schedule this, and between school holidays and especially with kids, it's been crazy. But thank you for taking the time out. I know you are especially busy with the big news, which I'm sure we'll get to at the end. But how have you been? How was the summer? And how are you doing now?
Summer was great, but fall is even better. I mean, obviously back to school and all the Jewish holidays, which mean no school in the first few weeks in New York, mean we're playing a little bit of catch up. But I just think this season kind of feels like new beginnings. I know some people associate that with the new year, but I think back to school and fall is just one of my favorite times of year. So I'm feeling energized and so delighted that we're finally getting a little temperature break, to be honest.
That's right.
I was needing that.
Amazing. So Stephany, I know when we first started connecting, one of the things that we sort of synced on or found common ground on is effectively the theme of the Intercode podcast and the site, creating networks, building relationships. And I was especially struck by your story. Obviously, still a lot to be written, but you've been exceptionally successful at not just on leadership positions, but also building out a successful enterprise. It would be great to share some introductions from your perspective of, what is your story? What led to your success? I'm excited to hear that.
Well, I'm excited to tell a little bit about it. I always say to people, first and foremost, I'm a middle-aged mom living in suburbia. I happen to work in tech, and that's awesome. And I think a lot of our identities are sometimes bigger than just like the work title or thing that we do. And that is, I think, going to play a little bit into the story of how I got here. But most recently, I've been the founder and CEO of a payments company called ORUM, which I started about 6 years ago, wanting to build software that could close the time to money gap. And I wanted money movement to feel like Amazon same-day delivery. So I spent 6 years building that business. I'm excited to say that the ORUM team and our tech and everything else joined Stripe this summer by way of acquisition, which is exciting for me and also a huge shift in a bunch of different ways, some of which I'm still getting accustomed to. But when I think about success, I often just say, listen, it's not a binary characteristic. It's not time-bound, and it's very personal in how you choose to define it. I choose to define it and think about it as consistently putting myself in rooms where my curiosity can be satisfied. And I think part of that is just knowing what's interesting to you and chasing it a little bit. I think one of the challenges, which I'll probably talk more about today, is that as we develop a sense of identity from our youth onward, we're pushed to be certain about what's next, certain about what we want to do in life, certain about our career path. And in a lot of cases, our traditional norms, work in the legal or medical arena, become a lawyer. And those are great. Those are super good fits for people. Those people are successful. And then there's a lot of non-traditional things. Following your heart, being passionate, labors of love in which you do something every day that you're proud of. And oh, by the way, you get paid. Places that do really tap into unique, unusual skill sets. Those are the things that I tend to be really attracted to. And I tend to veer away a little bit from the traditional path of linear success and focus more on range of experience, which for me is actually selfishly very additive as I get to learn something new, master a new domain. So if I look back on my career, which was, a lot of financial services in the beginning, started my career as a certified financial planner. I ended up working in tech, worked for an amazing startup. We went through a big acquisition. We can talk more about that. And then I went to SoulCycle, and everyone thinks that's crazy. But then they also want to know more about it. And I think that's part of what is so interesting about being able to choose for yourself what you want to do and not be as worried about what others want for you. So that's a lot of how I think about it.
Stephany, you hit on a couple of things that just completely blew my mind. And one of the things that you hit on is success may not be linear.
Yeah.
As we grow up, both age-wise and in our professional careers, one thing that we are always focused on, at least I was always focused on, is, hey, build on my previous successes. It sounds great on paper, but in real life, that's not exactly how it goes. You have to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And that's such an important learning. I'm amazed. I that this is not already in a book. We should definitely. And the
Maybe
other thing,
someday. Maybe
yeah,
someday.
yeah, absolutely. And that's like, you're coming out strong right off the bat. That is amazing. And the other thing that is even better is the innate need that we've been ingrained with about the need to be certain about something, right? That you have to
Mhm.
be successful at something. It doesn't have to be like that. And
Well, the question is usually wrong. The question is, what do you want to do as opposed to what
mm,
gives you joy? What challenges you? Where do you think you
yeah,
have strengths? And I think we might arrive at different answers if the
mm,
questions were asked differently and asked over periods of time. My life has been kind of bucketed into different seasons, much like you. We have
mm,
kids in
yeah,
school. It's a very different season than when I didn't have kids or when my kids
yeah,
were really young, which will be
yeah,
different than the season in which they're in high school. And so sometimes the answer to what do I want, what gives me joy, what am I great at, changes a little bit based on those seasons. But I do think that it is to your point, like if we can think about range of experience, ultimately someone may end up higher paying, higher title, more of something they really want, but it won't be climbing the rung over rung over rung steps on a ladder that was kind of the tradition and probably our parents and how we saw people raised before us where they thought about what's next.
yeah.
I know there's a generation of thinkers and builders today that are going across different territories and coming out as really incredible generalists who can then go into 5 or 6 different categories and be really successful.
Correct. Yeah. Wow. That is very insightful. That sort of segues into somewhat not necessarily a traditional thing, right? I mean, as folks experience these different aspects of career growth, different sectors, different types of jobs and roles, sometimes things that they're passionate about, sometimes things that they're really actually good at, their opinions will change about how things are successful in one versus another vertical. So in your opinion, have you seen something that A, works for you in terms
Mm.
of building out these networks? And
Hmm.
B, would you be able to sort of share what works better in fintech, right? In terms of
Mm. Hmm.
networking, relationships. So would be helpful to sort of tease that out because that's important.
I can definitely share what has worked for me, and let's see if that
Yeah.
translates to fintech
Yeah.
specifically. I think the first thing I'll say is like LinkedIn followers are not a
Yeah.
network. It's like a very
Yes.
interesting thing that people think of it that way. And maybe that's how it started. And it certainly has the benefits of allowing you to connect with other people. But like a network is really a group of people who pick up the phone when you call. They answer your text, they answer your email. And ideally for me, I want to build a network that's diverse in a lot of different ways: ages, skills, experiences, domain expertise, types of thinking. And so when I think about who's in my network, yeah, there are maybe 10,000 people that follow me on LinkedIn. Some I know their names, some I don't. That's not really a network. A network is the closer to home inner circle of people that I could reach out to, not because I want to curry favor, but because I genuinely either have something to offer, an
Huh.
introduction, a friend, a need, a sales opportunity, or because I would like their expertise on something. And honestly, one of the things that I found about just humans in general is if you can give them a chance to expound on their expertise, they're
Huh.
willing to give you 10 or 15 minutes. They like talking. Other people like talking about something special that they do all
That
day
they
that could
do.
help you learn. And I think that's one of the tools. But below that, I think what's for me super important is I always say to people, be known for something. And I'll tell you some examples of like how to interpret that. I think I'm known personally for a couple of things. First, I was known as a certified financial planner with a bunch of financial planning and wealth management
Uh-huh.
expertise. And that is not expertise that ever expires, luckily. So I still get called on for sitting on boards or advising companies or helping founders that are in that territory. And that's exciting because I still love financial planning and advice and wealth management. I think about it a lot. I read about it. I stay current. I'm also known for someone who knows payments based on what I did and built at ORUM and now working at Stripe. And that's also exciting. I can lend a hand to someone. I can offer expertise. I can debate, opine, consider the future. And I think that's really fun and valuable. But then there's some other segments. I'm known as a founder, right? I'm known
Huh.
as a working mom. And so being known for a couple of different things is, I think, part of what draws people to see common interests. And I do this a lot through storytelling. You know, LinkedIn is one of the places, but not the only place,
Yep.
podcasts and other avenues too, where I talk about how my journey has gone. And I try to provide what I consider to be authentic, natural insights. Again, I'm a middle aged mom. I live in suburbia. I'm raising kids. Working in tech is important to me and I love doing it. But I have a lot more to contribute than just that one narrow piece. And I think that helps people understand that you can be quite normal, actually, and do
Mhm.
really ambitious things. And when chasing something ambitious, you really can't achieve the totality of ambition alone. It does require a network. It does require reaching out to being brave enough to ask for something and see if someone will return that. And over
Yeah.
many years of practicing that, it's gotten better and better and better.
Yeah. That is something that I'm correlating this with when I first came here. I don't want to say I was an introvert, I was an ambivert, right? Unless people pulled me in, I would not connect. But it took me a while to get there, to be known for something. In some cases, it was being good at tech at the very
Hmm.
beginning, to then being good at spreadsheets, then being good at PowerPoint as you go higher up that corporate ladder. Eventually, now I do a lot of nonprofit work, being in sales. But how does, in your opinion, how do people start on that journey to be known for something? And I know you've had a spectacular career so far, and that's great. And you've done something. Would you be able to share any pointers on potentially how to get started, right?
There's a million different avenues to start in. I think you definitely want to consider just localization as an opportunity. So I happen to live in the New York area now, and that is awesome because if I want to go to a meetup or find kind of an industry specific event in which I could meet other people and start to develop this capability of being known for any one of the things I talked about, there's infinite supply in my area, and I think really everywhere. So start hyper local. Think about the community you live in, the people that you work with every day, and the things that you are interested in as either passion projects or part of what you're developing expertise in. So let's go to coding and engineering. There's so many permutations of engineering expertise, architectural, security.
Yeah.
Obviously, now we have AI as a whole domain. So I think even just starting with finding a group of people that are thinking about, wondering about, questioning, doing something in a territory that's interesting and drawing from them their knowledge and sharing yours starts to build that first layer of a network where other people know who you are, what you do, what you're great at, and why they should call you. And I think being of use or of value to someone without needing to be like, quid pro quo, I'll do this, you do that. It's like as simple as saying, hey, I'm going to go to this, either meetup or happy hour. And my goal is to walk away being useful to one person. Meet people, shake their hands, look them in the eye. And instead of all the usual questions of like, where do you work and what do you do? And like, what's one thing that I could help you with based on the people I know in the industry I'm in? Are you looking for customers? Are you hiring? Asking questions that are
Asking.
about that person lead them to want to tell you more and also open doors where you could be of value. And I think that really does begin to build the network component of people recognizing not only that you know something, but you might be willing to stick your neck out to help them. And we all got here where we stand today. We all got here by way of someone agreeing to hire us when we had no experience or agreeing to work with us to learn more about something we needed to get better at. And everybody had to open a door for somebody else. Be the person that
Yeah.
opens that door.
That is so cool. I'm just taking notes as we uh, person that opens doors. And look, that is something that is easy to do, easy for pretty much anybody to get started with. I'll give you a good example here, just as an aside. I was trying to do something on the dev side, on the tech side, you know, for the longest time, even though that is not my sort of skill set. Ended up that the nonprofit I volunteer for was looking for a volunteer management platform. So I said, hey, let's see if there's something out there that you can just customize instead of developing it. So
That's a
that,
great example, right? Being
right,
useful
being
in a
useful.
moment where you don't have to build it for someone. You just
Yeah,
know even how to like help them get started. You can take
correct.
away months of investigating or wrong turns just because of the knowledge you have. It's an amazing example.
Right. And what ended up happening was, because, me being not fully proficient on the dev side, I then asked for volunteers within the organization saying that, hey, I'm trying to do this. Does somebody know a little bit of Ruby on Rails or a little bit of Java to help
Hmm.
me? And now I was able to connect with multiple volunteers in that nonprofit to build out like a mini trusted network. And it could be really that simple. So absolutely, being local, trying to find opportunities where you are involved today, great way of starting that. So let's say we somebody does find that, and in your opinion, uh, as you said, start local, you get these intros. So what helps you? What drives you to networking and I don't want to say that's the right question. The way I would ask that is, when you're networking, would you focus on just pure intros or for networking, quid pro quo, as we would say, or are you always looking at building longer term or deeper relationships?
I mean, it's always a combination of things when you're in a situation in which you're at a conference or you're at a happy hour or you're in a meetup or you're speaking somewhere, sort of like what the dynamics of that group are. But I always prioritize relationships. And I think a learning for me is to, again, get into questions that are geared at getting that person to open up to you. And sometimes that's just like being vulnerable and sharing something about yourself
Yeah.
that helps with shared connections. I'd say most business decisions in the world get done through people who like to work with each other. Not necessarily
Yeah.
favors, although sometimes that's the case. But people liking each other is a big part of what you think about when you think about picking up the phone and saying like, oh, we need a vendor for this, let me call so and so. And so I think it's just really super important to think about how relationships start and how they develop. Just because I have met someone once doesn't mean we have a relationship, but it might turn into a relationship
Mhm.
based on how much connection we had in the conversation. And one way to get that is to be really intentional. There might be someone across the room that you really want to go say hi to. Don't be transactional and walk away from the person you're chatting with. Like, that other human will be there. Finish the conversation, look someone in the eye, do your best to remember their name. I struggle with names, I'm great with faces. If needed, take a picture of their badge or their name tag so that
Oh,
you can connect
nice.
later. And when you connect on LinkedIn, on email, whatever format, a text that you're sending to remember each other, offer up something you remember from the conversation that will go so much further in cementing just the beginnings of a
Correct.
relationship.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think that like shared connections and common ground are bigger than work territory. I work in payments and I do a lot in fintech. So of course I can find people that I want to talk with about the latest stablecoin news or what's trending with 1033s, big juicy headlines with the banks and the, aggregators. But I also sometimes really want to talk to someone about like the trip they just took, or as you asked me at the beginning, like summer and, anything I can learn to get to know someone that sort of matches my interests. And the next time I talk to them, it might not be about fintech, right? It might actually be
That's
about
right.
something else. But down the road, we may come back to that fintech or that payments or that, financial planning or specialized knowledge. And I think when you're following up with someone that you have recently met, if there is an ask, I think it's okay to have one. Hey, after our, first meeting,
First,
I
yeah.
was thinking about this and it would be really interesting if you fill in the blanks. I think that's okay. Be direct about it, but don't be so transactional that you don't come back and follow through and thank that person, that you don't think about them next time you're trying to get something done. And I think some of this kind of comes back to just like maintaining relationships.
Yeah.
How that feeling when somebody out of the blue contacts you and you're like, I haven't heard from you in 10 years. You must need something.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
That's actually an interesting one, right? That is something that a lot of folks struggle with. How does one keep the network from seeming transactional? Because you're right. Based on how we had built the relationship originally, we fortunately are in an enviable position. We picked up from where we left
Oh,
off,
that's
but
awesome. Yeah.
it's not easy for everybody. Right. The,
No,
the
it's
the
not.
feeling of transactional comes in. So have you dealt with that too? What are your thoughts on, how to get around that if there is one?
I think that it's going to happen no matter what, that there will be people that surface that you're absolutely thrilled to reconnect with. And it's almost
Right.
like you had lunch yesterday. And then there's going to be people that resurface that you had an ancillary connection to and nothing more.
Mhm.
And what I'm really careful about is the balance between what I said in the beginning, which is what doors can I help open or where can I
Yeah.
be helpful to you, against the social proofing that people want by being able to
Mhm.
leverage my introduction and claim they know me or know me well. So let me go like a layer deeper. A lot of times in hiring, there's a role open and somebody will call me and say, "Oh my God, I have the most amazing referral. You have to meet them." And that person's personal reference carries a
Mhm.
ton of weight. Now, if that person is referring me to someone that they've never worked with, don't know well,
Mm.
that's a problem,
That's,
right?
yeah.
So when people that I haven't seen or worked with for a decade surface, and the first question is, can you introduce me or help me with this role? The gap I'm facing is that I can't speak to your current strengths. It's been 10 years. You might be great at something, but I haven't worked with you. And I don't want to put other people in a position where I come in saying this person's amazing. And in fact, I have a gap of knowledge.
Mm.
So that's one of the things I think a lot about too is like what kinds of asks, what context is there? And am I actually the right person to even be helpful? And sometimes the answer is actually no, for a variety of reasons.
That is very insightful, Stephanie. This is something that I know I've personally struggled with, but having you articulate that adds a little bit more context. And for somebody, especially in your position, or as we get more senior in our roles, it's okay to say no, that, hey, perhaps no is the right answer. And that is very insightful. I think that is something that people need to learn. People need to do their own flavor of assessing these opportunities and connects and say, okay, this works for me or this does not work for me, which is an interesting topic because networking per se has changed over the last decade and a half, especially more so now today with not just instant messaging, but now we have like near real-time information about pretty much everything that is happening around us. There's a new IPO that comes out or somebody has gone through an acquisition and so on and so forth. But in your opinion, how has uh, networking evolved or keeping and growing these relationships and evolved over the past 10 years? Or perhaps another way of asking that is, you seem to be doing something right. What are you doing that has helped you stay ahead of this evolution in technologies, in the business world? What has helped you stay ahead of that curve?
Let me go back in time and I'll tell you a little bit about the, last 10 years, let's say. And then I think I'll more specifically answer your question. So
Yeah.
about 10 years ago, I was emerging from an incredibly hard, fun, but hard decade of building LearnVest and then integrating to Northwestern Mutual when we were acquired in 2015. And I looked up one day and I realized I did have a big network, but it was highly uniform. It
Mhm.
was lots and lots and lots of people in the financial advice, financial planning, wealth management ecosystem.
Mhm.
Great. But it spurred me to think about how I might differentiate that network. And it actually really spurred me to take a new job, as I said, Soul Cycle, in a totally different industry
Yep.
where I was going to build a different kind of network. And that paid a ton of dividends. What I think a lot about today is how often people think about someone and never reach out, right? And I mean, I think about so many people that I worked with, that I loved, that we had a great memory. And so, what I've tried to do, and I think I'm actually now quite good at this, is if I'm somewhere that spurs a memory or I'm just having a moment where I'm thinking of someone, I send them a note with no expectation. Hey, no need to reply. I'm sitting in this cafe. We used
That
to sit here
is
all the time. You know what? Not much has changed. The menu still looks good. Thinking of you, hope all is well. That's it. No ask, no need to send me a note back. Some people will like heart the photo and like the, text message. Some people will immediately reply. Sometimes people will call me. But what always feels good when you are connecting with someone is being remembered. And I try to think about how often I think great things about someone. You were really good at X. And I remember that. And now I'm sitting in a job where I wish I was a little better at that. And I'm thinking of you. So many different ways. And think about all the downtime people have, right? We commute by train. And so we're probably already on our phones. And we decompress by getting on our phones. Like there's so many different windows. And so what I try to do is actually when the thought occurs to me, like take 30 seconds and drop a text to someone, take a selfie in the place that's inspiring the conversation. I was actually at Stripe Tour this week, and there were tons of industry connections, folks I'd worked with at banks and other places. And a bunch of us snapped various selfies and started texting with old colleagues and ORUM alumni. And it just sparked this like really lovely moment in time to reconnect. So I think that's like really a long way of saying like, one, it is intentional. And I spent the last decade after I came out of my sort of heads down period and like
yeah.
just financial advice expertise to expand the aperture of who I know and how I spend time. And two, it's not that hard to just send a message saying like, I'm thinking of you today. And that could be the difference between never reconnecting versus getting back together, working together again, or any number of other things that might happen as you just cultivate those relationships.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you highlighted, hey, you remembered somebody from something and then you reached out to them, whether it was possibly you guys had a burger together or a
Hmm.
milkshake or a coffee or something. That actually ties back into what you'd mentioned earlier. Perhaps they were known for something that they made it
Hmm.
evident to you. And you're like, hey, I know this person for something. And
Hmm.
it is so interesting that not only not only are you saying this, you actually have implemented that whole thing for your own network that, hey, be known for something, and those that are known for something, you actively keep in touch and reach out. Stochastically is also fine, but that's amazing how that works, how that circle works. You have some amazing stories, and your career transitions are so interesting. Help us understand, have you used just texting obviously is one of the tools that everybody uses today for networking, but talk to us about how important you think LinkedIn is or how not important LinkedIn is. I know you mentioned that followers is not a network. And
No, it's not.
but what helps today other than doing the obvious, hey, do the right thing, pick up from where you left off, or be interesting. Talk to us about the tools that people have seen, or at least you have seen, that have helped you.
Things I do like about LinkedIn is that it is a catch-all. If you don't remember my phone number, you lost your phone, or the only email you have for me is outdated in some way. And for that reason, I actually do use LinkedIn messaging quite a lot, both
Mhm.
sending and receiving. And it tends to be a really good place. Like if, especially after going through, or I'm getting acquired by Stripe, people made the assumption maybe my email didn't work anymore and they want to reach out and say either congratulations or whatever the case may be. So LinkedIn absolutely has a place in all of this. And I think it is a really useful way to get context on someone, and find out more about their background. And again, kind of finding their like common interests. Listen, there are WhatsApp groups, some are private, some are not. I mean, who knows if I'm even seeing all of the things. What I
Yeah.
will say is like, I get cold WhatsApp DMs all the time, from various kinds of people, founders, someone that's in payments that has a question, customers, and I always try to reply. If you have found my phone number and you're WhatsApping me, we're probably a little bit more closely connected than if you're somewhere second, third, fourth degree.
Yep.
Actually, it's funny. I had a customer at ORUM that I needed to chat with them about something, and so their email had like their
Yeah.
signature and the person's
Yeah.
phone number, and I was like, I'm just going to call this phone number, and I did. The founder was like, oh my God. Oh my God, you're calling me. And I was like, of
Yeah.
course. Yes, I'm calling you. I'm calling you. I mean, like a super lovely chat. And he's followed up about a bunch of different things that they're going to continue to do.
Yeah.
And it was just like a really nice, just like extra way beyond email to just be like, hey, let's just talk it out. And I'm going to call you. So I don't have any idea what the future holds, though I think it's interesting to see what the dating apps are starting to
Hmm.
think about next. And there's some interesting things around loneliness and friendship and community building that I think are going to come out of some of those platforms. It's not directly about networking as it is just
Mhm.
like human connection. But I think it's going to end up that we probably have things that evolve, and LinkedIn's been the dominant thing. I do wonder often if there's a next gen version that might be less noisy. The one
Hmm.
real downside of LinkedIn is there's a lot of paid activity that happens. So a lot of recruiters and a lot of,
Yeah.
I don't know, AI generated BDR, SDR
Yeah.
outreach. And that
Yeah.
just clogged the pipes for me in terms of finding the conversations that
Yeah.
I really want to spend time on. But that's a LinkedIn problem, not really anything else.
Yeah, I'm glad you sort of highlighted what might potentially work in the future, because that is something that at Intercode we are looking at very closely, creating sort of a dedicated, I don't want to say transaction, but like a dedicated network where folks are participating with the sole purpose of helping each other and building a strong network.
Mhm.
More on that as we move forward, but thanks for sharing that. I know we're coming up right on time, but there are some two really key questions I want to ask you. First, about the amazing acquisition story. Tell us a little bit more. Whatever you can, officially share is fine, but we are excited to hear about that.
Yes. Well, my lips are sealed on most things Stripe, but we are working on some really incredible stuff. And I think what's really actually super interesting in this moment, is that I get a very special experience of being able to be fresh eyes on something. And yes, it's payments and it's very adjacent and similar and contextually very familiar to what we were building at ORUM. And I get to be the new kid. It's only for a short period of time.
Yeah.
But it's a really big advantage to be able to ask questions without questioning the person who's put forward the thought or the thesis. I don't know all the acronyms. I have a lot to learn. And every time I ask a question, my hope is that it's helping us think beyond the immediacy of the document we're working in. And I, of course, have to get up to speed. So I do have to ask a lot of questions. But just being fresh eyes somewhere is really awesome, satisfying, and something that I like to be able to do. And I think it's probably part of what has driven me to explore different problem areas: consumer, fitness, financial planning, wealth management, B2B, payments. They're all different challenges. And I'm fresh eyes each and every time I pick a different one to spend time on.
That's such a great story. I mean, somebody with that vast experience, not just in terms of number of years, but number of sectors and workflows and problems that you've solved. Stripe is lucky to have you on board, and I'm sure it's going to be another success for you and your career. So we are really wishing you well here, Stephany. One of the things that sort of differentiates leaders from everybody else is, like yourselves, great leaders go above and beyond. Are there some things that you are more focused on beyond your day job now at Stripe? That would be a great story to hear if there is one.
Yeah, there's a couple
Yeah,
things. So
yeah.
one, I do some angel investing, and that is always an exciting way to support other people early in the journey. Two, I sit on a couple of fintech boards, a company called Retirable, building a retirement paycheck, which is one of the hugest problems we have to solve for American households. I sit on another fintech board, Harness Tax, which is building incredible AI tax solutions. And then I advise a company called Page, also female founded. And that one I also love because it's kind of at the intersection of figuring out how you're going to have money and plan wisely. But it's really about legacy planning for businesses and
Mm.
consumers. And just all of those are just like, they're passion areas. They're places where I can apply industry knowledge and various lived experiences. And then outside of all of that, lots of time with my family, tons of time outdoors. And locally, we spend a lot of time with one of my favorite causes, which is called Feeding Westchester. I'm from an immigrant household. My dad and his family faced tremendous food insecurity, both as refugees and then when they came to the US, getting established. And I live in Westchester County, which I think most people think of as wealthy and white and safe. And it is many of those things. But 1 in 3 households in my county are at risk of hunger. That includes kids, seniors, and working families. And we've had a lot of government funding pulled away from our food banks, which makes it an even more challenging time to close this gap. So it's a very complex reality that we live in, and rising costs for housing, healthcare, childcare, all those things are pushing more and more families to the edge. And when budgets are tight, food is one of the things that actually surprisingly is the first thing to go. And it leaves so many people without nutrition or access to food that they need to thrive. So it's just something that I both contribute time and dollars towards, and really try to be intentional about time outside of work being spent in my community and places that are really important to me in terms of my values and things that I care a lot about.
Wow. What an incredible story, Stephany. I mean, first off, they are incredibly lucky to have you, not just provide visibility into the efforts, but also having you on their side to push this. Perhaps a better question to ask you would have been, what is it that you don't do, right? So,
Well, actually, let me tell you, I don't go to a lot of fintech dinners. I don't do a lot of happy hours. I try to go to bed early. I'm an older, founder here. There's a lot I don't do. You have to be really intentional with your time.
absolutely. Okay, so real quick, just a couple of rapid fire questions that we always ask. When talking about sort of meeting somebody, do you prefer coffee or lunch if it's a first meeting?
I really love matcha, although coffee's okay too. And
Okay,
I've been
okay.
drinking matcha actually while we're sitting here in my latte. And I really like walking. New York's such an amazing walking city. And I think that people face to face struggle a little bit to be really like intellectually honest, but
Yeah.
shoulder to shoulder, we do better at actually like opening up.
Amazing. Okay. Your first, if somebody wants to reach Stephany, what would you prefer? Text, email, or phone for intros?
Text me.
Amazing. And you already referred to that earlier. If they happen to know the number, chances are they're in some sort of a common group. So that's always is a big one. When talking about networking, what are the types of relationships that have sort of changed your career? Have they been more by mentors or by peers?
I mean, luckily I have both, and I think they're equally valuable. I think it's a bit overlooked how much your peers can teach you. And so we spent all this time looking for mentors and ignore the fact that there's incredibly talented people our same age, our same level in a company that might be as incredibly impactful as a mentor or someone else could be. And so I get growth, luckily, and value and benefit from all of those.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. Those are the top two, three questions we always ask because it is helpful to understand how successful people perceive the inbound. And in
Mm.
somebody in your role is getting like a ton of inbound coming in and helpful to understand how you work through it and deal with it. Just in closing, a couple of quick sort of questions that we ask. If somebody wants to get into sales or somebody is in sales, but really wants to develop their networks, how do they sort of tone down being salesy every single time they network, right? What thoughts could you share there?
That's a good question. I think it's something that you have to be conscious of, which is try not to look hungry or thirsty, right? Like that's just,
Understood.
something that I think people need to practice a
Mhm.
bit because it can come off a bit the wrong way.
Awesome. And last question: if with your background, you've gone across or you've worked across multiple industries, what is the number one principle that has held you in good stead um, when it comes
Be a
to
good
being
Be a good
successful?
person. Be trusted. I have been so fortunate to have an unbelievable number of people call me to ask me something that they feel they can't talk to anyone else about. They're founders or they're company operators and they can't talk to their board or they can't talk to their CEO. They're struggling with something sometimes super deep. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to sell the company. They're struggling with like a thing gone wrong, like fraud or company culture not working the way they want. And I keep those secrets.
Incredible. Well said, Stephany. Just wrapping this up, thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing what makes networking successful, not just for everybody, but specifically for you. I'm so glad some of the stuff that you do outside of work, especially the nonprofits feeding Westchester, that is again, can't say enough about the amount of help that you're providing them. Lovely to have you on the podcast. And as they say in Star Wars, may the force be with you.
And with you, my friend, thank you.